The restaurant was called the Celestial Flame, and it sat on the upper levels of Station Orvex 7 like a crown jewel. This was where the rich came to eat. This was where the powerful made deals worth more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. The walls were made of something that looked like glass, and the lights floated in the air without any wires. Everything about this place screamed wealth and importance. Yunsiri did not feel wealthy or important. She felt tired. She had been working here for 8 months now, carrying plates and filling glasses and smiling at creatures who never smiled back. At 28 years old, she had imagined her life would look different. But life rarely cares about what we imagine. I was human. In the grand scale of the galaxy, that meant very little. Humans had only joined galactic society about 60 years ago, and most alien species still treated them like children who had wandered into an adult. Conversation, primitive, simple, good. For cleaning and serving and staying out of the wait out, she pushed through the kitchen doors, balancing 3 plates on her arms. The dinner rush was in full force, and the noise hit her like a wave. Cooks shouted orders. Servers rushed past each other. Somewhere in the chaos, a glass broke and someone cursed in a language Sari did not recognize. Table 14 needs their drinks, called out the floor manager. A Kralith named Vorse. The Kralith were reptilian, with scales that shifted color based on their mood. Right now, Vorse was a deep orange. Annoyed. He was always annoyed. "I am on my way," Sari replied, keeping her voice neutral. Vorse did not acknowledge her. He never did. To him, she was just another pair of hands. Replaceable, forgettable. She delivered the plates to a table of Meldrani merchants. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished silver. One of them was telling a joke, and the others laughed in a high-pitched sound that hurt Sari's ears. None of them looked at her when she set down their food. She might as well have been a machine. This was normal. This was everyday. I had stopped expecting respect a long time ago. What she expected was her paycheck at the end of each week. That paycheck went straight to a Velthari loan shark named Cress, paying off a debt that was not even hers. Her father had borrowed money years ago to save their family's farm on Earth. He died before he could pay it back. The debt passed to Sari like a disease. She had 3 more years of payments. 3 more years of carrying plates and swallowing her pride. She could survive that. She had survived worse. The night continued like all the others. Sari moved between tables like a ghost. She refilled drinks before anyone asked. She memorized orders without writing them down. She noticed when a guest glass was running low, when someone looked uncomfortable in their seat, when a dish arrived slightly wrong. Humans were good at noticing things. It was one of the few advantages they had. Around 9 in the evening, Vorse appeared beside her with that orange color even deeper than before. "You are going upstairs tonight," he said. Sari felt her stomach drop. "Upstairs?" "The private level. One of the servers quit this afternoon. You are filling in." The private level. Sari had never been up there. None of the human staff had. That floor was reserved for guests so important that even looking at them wrong could end your career. Or your life. "I have not been trained for the private level," she said carefully. "You have been trained to carry plates and keep your mouth shut. That is all you need." Vorse handed her a different uniform, black with silver trim. Fancier than her usual one. "Change quickly. The guest arrives in 20 minutes. He walked away before she could argue. Not that arguing would have helped. In the staff changing room, Sari stared at herself in the mirror. Her face looked pale. Her hands were shaking slightly. She told herself to calm down. It was just another table. Just another rich alien who would ignore her existence. She had done this 1,000 times, but something felt different tonight. She could not explain it. There was a weight in the air, like the pressure before a storm. She took a deep breath and headed for the elevator. The private level was smaller than she expected. Just a single hallway with 3 doors. The carpet was so soft that her feet made no sound. The lights were dim and warm. Everything felt hushed, like being inside a secret. The security guard stood outside one of the doors. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. He looked at Sari with eyes that held no emotion. "You are the server?" "Yes." He scanned her with some kind of device, then stepped aside. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact unless invited. Do not touch the guest for any reason. Understood?" "Understood." The door slid open, and Sari stepped inside. The private dining room was beautiful in a way that made her uncomfortable. A long table sat in the center, surrounded by floating candles. The walls displayed moving images of distant galaxies. Temperature controls kept the room warmer than the rest of the station, almost uncomfortably so. And at the head of the table sat the guest. Sari had heard of the Dracanus species before. Everyone had. They were ancient, powerful, and terrifying. Dragon-like creatures who had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years. But hearing about them and seeing one in person were very different things. Lord Viker Thran was enormous. Even seated, he towered over everything in the room. His scales were deep crimson, almost black in the dim light. His eyes burned like golden fire. When he breathed, small wisps of smoke curled from his nostrils. He wore no clothing, but was adorned with bands of precious metal around his arms and neck. He looked like something out of a nightmare. He looked like a god. Around him sat 5 other aliens. Business partners, Sari guessed. They were laughing too loudly, drinking too much, trying too hard to seem comfortable in the dragon's presence. Sari forced her legs to move. She approached the table with her eyes down, just as the guard had instructed. Her heart was pounding so hard, she was sure everyone could hear it. "Good evening," she said softly. "I will be serving you tonight." No one responded. No one even looked at her. She was invisible, just as she was supposed to be. But as she moved to fill the first glass, she felt something strange. A sensation of being watched. She glanced up for just a moment, and her eyes met the golden gaze of Lord Vaker Thrn. In that single second, she saw something she did not expect. The dragon looked tired. The dragon looked afraid. Then the moment passed, and Sari looked away, her hands trembling as she poured the wine. Something was very wrong here. She could feel it in her bones. And she had no idea that by the end of this night, her entire life would change because of a simple napkin. Sari moved around the table like a shadow, filling glasses and clearing plates with practiced ease. Her hands did the work automatically, while her mind focused on something else entirely. She was watching, listening, trying to understand what she had seen in the dragon's eyes. Lord Viker Thran sat at the head of the table like a statue. He was massive and powerful, the kind of creature that could tear apart everyone in this room without breaking a sweat. His scales gleamed in the candlelight. His golden eyes tracked every movement. But he barely touched his food. He barely spoke. For someone so powerful, he seemed strangely small. The other guests did not notice. They were too busy talking and laughing and trying to impress each other. There were 5 of them in total. 2 Krolith businessmen with scales that shifted between green and blue. A Moldrani woman with silver skin and a sharp smile. A creature Sari did not recognize, covered in soft white fur. And finally, seated right next to Lord Vaker, was a Velthari named Counselor Drosses. Sari knew the Velthari well. Cress, the loan shark who owned her debt, was Velthari. They were tall and elegant, with smooth purple skin and eyes that held no warmth. They were known throughout the galaxy as skilled negotiators and even more skilled manipulators. The Velthari always got what they wanted. One way or another, Counselor Drosses seemed different from the others at the table. He was not trying to impress Lord Vecker. He acted like they were equals. More than that, he acted like he was in charge. Every few minutes, he would reach over and touch the dragon's arm in a gesture of false friendship. Each time, Sari noticed Lord Vicker's claws dig slightly into the table. The shipment will arrive on schedule, Drosses was saying. Our friends in the Keth Dominion are very eager to receive the merchandise. I am sure they are, Lord Vecker replied. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. But there was no strength in it. No fire. Threat Industries has always delivered quality products, Drosses continued smoothly. Weapons that work. Weapons that win wars. The Keth are fighting to secure their borders, and they need the best. You should be proud. Proud, Lord Vecker repeated. The word sounded hollow. Ser. I moved to refill the dragon's glass. As she leaned in, she caught a glimpse of his face up close. The scales around his eyes were darker than the rest, almost bruised. He looked like he had not slept in weeks. He looked like a prisoner wearing the costume of a king. She poured the wine and stepped back quickly, keeping her eyes down. But her mind was racing. The Keth Dominion. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. The Keth were currently engaged in what they called a purification campaign in the border colonies. Entire populations were being wiped out. Millions of people were dying. And someone was selling them weapons. Lord Vecker Thren was that someone. Sari felt sick. She had been serving a war criminal. A monster who was helping other monsters commit genocide. No wonder he looked tired. Anyone with a conscience would lose sleep over that. But then she remembered his eyes. That look of fear. That look of exhaustion. Monsters did not look afraid. Monsters did not look trapped. The dinner continued. Sari served the main course, a complicated dish that required careful presentation. The guests ate and talked about business deals and political connections and other things that meant nothing to a simple waitress. But Sari kept watching, kept listening. Around the middle of the meal, something changed. Counselor Dross has received a message on his personal communicator. He read it, and a slow smile spread across his face. Excellent news, he announced to the table. The package has arrived safely at its destination. The other guests raised their glasses in celebration. Lord Vecker did not move. His claws were now fully embedded in the table's surface, carving deep grooves into the expensive wood. Wonderful, he said flatly. Indeed, Drosses replied. Now we can all relax. The package is comfortable and secure. As long as everyone cooperates, there will be no problems. Something about the way he said package made Sari's skin crawl. Packages did not need to be comfortable. Packages did not require cooperation. He was talking about a person. He had to be Dot. She watched Lord Vecker's face as this exchange happened. The dragon's eyes closed for just a moment, and something that looked like pain crossed his features. Then it was gone, replaced by that empty, defeated expression. In that moment, Sari understood. Lord Vecker Thren was not a monster. He was a hostage. Someone had taken something precious from him. Someone was forcing him to do terrible things. And that someone was sitting right next to him, touching his arm, smiling that cold Velthari smile. Counselor Drosses was the real monster here. Sari finished serving the main course and retreated to the corner of the room. Her heart was beating too fast. Her thoughts were spinning. She should stay quiet. She should do her job and go home and forget everything she had seen. Getting involved in the affairs of powerful aliens was a good way for a human to end up dead. But she could not stop thinking about her father. He had been trapped too. trapped by debt, by circumstance, by a galaxy that did not care about small people with small problems. No one had helped him. No one had even noticed his suffering. And he had died alone, broken, with the weight of impossible choices crushing him. Sari had promised herself that she would not become like the people who had ignored her father. She had promised herself that if she ever saw someone drowning, she would reach out a hand. Lord Vicar Thren was drowning. She could see it clearly now. The question was whether she was brave enough to do anything about it. The dinner moved into the dessert course. Sari served small plates of something sweet and colorful while the guests continued their celebration. Drosses was telling a story about a business rival he had ruined. Everyone laughed except for Lord Vicar, who stared at his plate like it contained poison dot as Sari cleared empty glasses. She passed close to the dragon's chair. For just a moment, their eyes met again. And in that brief connection, she saw something new. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. Like a drowning man spotting a distant shore. He had noticed her watching. He knew that she saw something wrong, and he was silently begging her to understand. Sari looked away quickly, her hands trembling. She was just a waitress, a nobody. What could she possibly do against someone like Counselor Drasses? But the question would not leave her mind. What could she do? And more importantly, what would she choose to do? The dessert plates were cleared. The guests finished their drinks. The evening was coming to an end. Sari knew that whatever decision she made, she needed to make it soon. She thought about her father. She thought about the debt that had crushed him. She thought about all the times people had looked away when they should have helped. She thought about a dragon with golden eyes, who looked more like a prisoner than a king. And slowly, a plan began to form in her mind. That it was crazy. It was dangerous. It would probably get her killed. But some things were more important than survival. Sari stood in the kitchen with her back against the cold metal wall. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in short, rapid bursts. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, like it was trying to escape. What was she thinking? What could she possibly do? She was a waitress. A human. A nobody in a galaxy full of ancient and powerful species. Lord Vicar Thren was one of the richest beings in 3 sectors. Counselor Drosses had connections that reached into every corner of political power. And she was worried about her next rent payment. The smart thing to do was nothing. Finish the shift. Go home. Forget everything she had seen. Let the powerful sort out their own problems. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dragon's face. That look of exhausted despair. That silent cry for help that no one else had noticed. You look like you have seen a ghost. Sari jumped at the voice. An older human man stood nearby, washing dishes at a large sink. His name was Park Junho, and he had worked in this kitchen for over 10 years. His hair was gray, his face was lined with age, and his eyes held the kind of weariness that came from a lifetime of hard work. I am fine, Sari said automatically. Junho raised an eyebrow. No, you are not. You are pale as paper, and your hands are shaking. What happened up there? Sari hesitated. She barely knew Junho beyond casual workplace conversations. Could she trust him? Should she trust anyone? Just nervous, she said finally. First time on the private level. Junho nodded slowly, but his eyes said he did not believe her. The private level is dangerous. Rich and powerful people play games that get small people killed. Best to keep your head down and stay invisible. I know. Do you? He set down the dish he was washing and looked at her directly. I have seen that look before. On young people who think they can make a difference. Who think that being brave is the same as being smart. Most of them are dead now. Sari felt a chill run down her spine. What happened to them? They got involved. They tried to help people who did not ask for help. They forgot that in this galaxy, humans are at the bottom of every list. Junho picked up another dish. We survive by being invisible. The moment we become visible, we become targets. It was good advice. Practical advice. The kind of advice that kept people alive. But Sari kept thinking about her father. He had been practical too. He had kept his head down. He had tried to be invisible. And he had died anyway, crushed by forces he could not fight. Maybe invisible was not the same as safe. Maybe invisible just meant dying alone. "Thank you for the advice," Sari said quietly. "I should get back." She grabbed a fresh cloth napkin from the stack and returned to the private dining room. The dessert plates had been cleared, and the guests were finishing their final drinks. The evening would end soon. Whatever she decided, she needed to decide now. Counselor Drosses was speaking again, his voice smooth and confident. "I must say, Lord Vaker, this partnership has been most profitable. I look forward to many more years of cooperation." "As do I," Lord Vaker replied. His voice was flat, dead. Of course, continued cooperation requires continued trust. And trust requires assurances. Drosses smiled that cold smile again. "I am sure you understand. I understand perfectly." The conversation was clear to Sari now. Drosses was reminding the dragon that he was trapped, that he had to keep cooperating, that whatever package they had taken would suffer if he stepped out of line. It was evil. Casual, polished, sophisticated evil, and no one was doing anything about it. SER moved around the table, collecting empty glasses. Her mind was racing. She had a pen in her pocket, the small one she used for writing orders. She had a napkin in her hand. But what could she possibly say? What message could change anything? She reached Lord Vaker's place at the table. The dragon sat motionless, staring at nothing. Up close, she could see that his scales had lost some of their shine. His golden eyes were dull. He looked like a flame that was slowly dying. This creature could crush her with one hand. He commanded armies and owned corporations, and held power that she could not even imagine. But right now, in this moment, he was more helpless than she had ever been. SER. I made her decision. Moving carefully, she pulled the napkin into her lap under the table's edge. With one hand, she uncapped her pen. With the other, she smoothed the cloth flat against her leg. She thought for a moment. What could she say that would mean anything? What words could reach someone who was surrounded by enemies and had no reason to trust a random human waitress? She wrote 3 simple words: "I can help." Her handwriting was small and neat. The black ink stood out against the white cloth. It was not much. It was everything. She finished clearing Lord Vaker's side of the table. As she picked up his barely touched dessert plate, she slipped the napkin beneath it. The cloth was hidden from view, visible only to whoever picked up the plate. For one heartbeat, she met the dragon's eyes, his golden gaze sharpened. For a moment, the tired creature was gone, replaced by something ancient and fierce and desperately alert. He had noticed the napkin. He had seen her movement. SER. I looked away immediately, keeping her expression neutral. She carried the plate toward the kitchen, walking at a normal pace, fighting the urge to run. Behind her, she heard the soft rustle of cloth. Lord Vaker had picked up the napkin. The seconds stretched into hours. She kept walking, kept breathing, kept waiting for a shout, a command, for guards to grab her and drag her away. Nothing happened. She pushed through the kitchen doors and set the plate down with trembling hands. Her whole body was shaking now. What had she done? What had she started? Junho looked at her from across the kitchen. His expression said he knew something had happened. But he did not ask. He simply returned to his dishes, giving her the gift of silence. Sari leaned against the counter and tried to calm her racing heart. The message was delivered. The dragon had read it. Now everything depended on whether he would respond. Minutes passed. The guests in the private room finished their drinks and began to leave. Sari heard the sounds of movement, of farewells, of doors opening and closing. She stayed in the kitchen, afraid to go back out, afraid to see what she had done. Finally, Vorse appeared in the doorway. His scales were still orange, still annoyed. The private level is empty. Clean up and then you are done for the night. Sari nodded wordlessly. She gathered her cleaning supplies and returned to the private dining room. It was empty now. The floating candles had dimmed. The temperature controls had returned to normal. The room felt hollow without the presence of those powerful beings. She moved to Lord Becker's chair and found what she was looking for, a napkin. Folded neatly. Placed exactly where she had left hers. With trembling fingers, Sari picked it up and unfolded it. There, written in elegant script that glowed faintly with some kind of luminescent ink, was a response. How? One word, one question. But it meant everything. He believed her. Or at least, he was desperate enough to ask. Sri did not have an answer yet. She had no plan, no resources, no idea what she was getting into. She was a waitress challenging forces that could destroy her without a second thought. But she had hope now. The dragon had hope now. And sometimes, hope was enough to start a revolution. She folded the napkin and slipped it into her pocket. Tomorrow she would figure out the next step. Tonight, she had done something that mattered. For the first time in a long time, Sari felt like something more than invisible. The night air of Station Orvx 7's lower district hit Sari's face as she stepped out of the staff exit. It was not real air, of course. Everything on the station was recycled and filtered, but they added scents to make it feel natural. Tonight it smelled like rain, though no rain had ever fallen here. Sari pulled her jacket tighter and started walking. Her apartment was 20 minutes away through narrow corridors and crowded marketplaces. Normally she enjoyed this walk. It helped her decompress after long shifts. Tonight, every shadow made her flinch. She kept thinking about the napkin in her pocket. That single word written in glowing ink. How? The dragon wanted to know how she could help him. The truth was, she had no idea. She had acted on impulse, on emotion, on some desperate need to do something that mattered. Now she had to figure out what came next. The corridor opened into a small plaza, where vendors sold late-night food to station workers. Sari usually stopped here for a bowl of noodles. Tonight she walked past without looking, too distracted by her thoughts. That was when she noticed the footsteps behind her. Heavy footsteps. Too heavy for a human. Moving at the exact same pace as her. Sari's heart began to race. She turned a corner, quickening her stride. The footsteps followed. She turned another corner. Still there. She was being followed. Panic rose in her chest. Had Counselor Drasses seen what she did? Had someone reported her? Was she about to disappear like so many other small people who got in the way of powerful aliens? She turned into a narrow alley that led toward her apartment building. The footsteps stopped, and then something blocked her path. It was a draconess. Not Lord Vaker, but someone similar. Smaller, younger, with scales of deep green rather than crimson. He wore simple black clothing and carried no weapons that she could see. But he did not need weapons. His claws and teeth were weapons enough. I backed against the wall, her breath coming in short gasps. Please, I do not have any money. I am just a waitress. The draconess said nothing. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. A data chip, no bigger than her thumbnail. He held it out to her. Sari stared at it, confused. What is this? A message, the draconess said. His voice was low and quiet. From someone who received a napkin tonight. Before Sari could respond, He pressed the chip into her palm, turned, and walked away. Within seconds, he had disappeared into the shadows of the station. Sari stood alone in the alley, her heart still pounding. The data chip felt hot in her hand, like it was burning with secrets. She ran the rest of the way home. Her apartment was small. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A tiny bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbors talking through them. But it was hers. It was safe. She locked the door behind her, then locked it again. She pulled the curtains closed over a single window. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. The data chip sat on her table like a tiny bomb dot. She should destroy it. She should pretend none of this had happened. She should go to sleep and wake up tomorrow and continue being invisible. But she knew she would not do any of those things. Ser, I retrieved her old tablet from under her bed. It was a cheap model, nothing fancy, but it had security features she had installed herself. She plugged in the data chip and waited. A message appeared on the screen. Text only, no images or video. But the words were enough. My name is Viker Thren. If you are reading this, then my servant delivered the chip successfully. I am taking a great risk by sending this message. I hope I have not misjudged you. 3 weeks ago, my daughter was taken. Her name is Sarah. She is 12 years old by human counting. She is the only family I have left. My wife died many years ago. Sarah is my entire world. Counselor Drasses orchestrated the kidnapping. He is part of a shadow organization that has infiltrated station security. They are forcing me to authorize weapons shipments to the Keth Dominion. If I refuse, if I go to the authorities, if I do anything to resist, they will hurt my daughter. I have money. I have power. I have armies that would burn worlds for me. But none of that matters when your child's life is in the hands of monsters. My own bodyguards report to Drasses. My communications are monitored. Every friend I thought I had has either been bought or threatened into silence. For 3 weeks, I have been completely alone. And then you looked at me, a human waitress. Someone so far beneath my notice that I should not have even seen your face. But you looked at me, and you saw something wrong. You passed me a napkin with 3 words that meant more than all the wealth I possess. I can help. I do not know if you can truly help. I do not know why you would risk yourself for a stranger, especially one of my kind. Draconis and humans have no history of friendship. We have barely even acknowledged each other's existence. But I am desperate. And you are the first person in 3 weeks who has seen me as something other than a tool or a target. If you meant what you wrote, then I need to know. How? How can a human waitress do what armies cannot? How can you reach my daughter when I cannot? I have attached everything I know about where Sarah is being held. Dras's private yacht docked at restricted Port 7. Security codes that I have managed to gather. Guard rotations that I have observed. Please, if there is anything you can do, anything at all, I'm begging you, help me save my daughter. Sari read the message 3 times. Each time, the weight of it grew heavier. This was real. A dragon lord was asking a human waitress to rescue his kidnapped child. It sounded like something from a story, except stories had happy endings and clear paths forward. This was just terrifying. She looked at the attached files. Security codes. Guard schedules. Maps of the restricted port. Lord Viker had given her everything he could. He had trusted her with information that could destroy him if it reached the wrong hands. Why? Because she passed him a napkin. Because she looked at him when everyone else looked away. Sari thought about what Park Junho had said in the kitchen. Small people who get involved in big problems end up dead. He was right. This was suicidal. She should delete the files and forget she ever saw them. But she kept thinking about that little girl, Sarah, 12 years old. Alone and scared and waiting for someone to save her. Sari had been a scared child once. When her father was struggling with debt, when loan sharks sent threats to their home, when her mother left because she could not handle the pressure. Sari had been young and terrified and completely helpless that no one had saved her. She had survived, but she had never been saved. Maybe she could not save everyone. Maybe she could not change the galaxy. But maybe, just maybe, she could save one little girl. She picked up her tablet and began to record a response. I do not know if I can help. I am just a waitress. I have no army, no power, no connections. But I know what it feels like to be trapped while everyone looks away. And I know that sometimes the people who nobody notices are the best people to do things that nobody expects. Give me time. Let me think. I will find a way. I promise. She encrypted the message and saved it to the chip. Tomorrow, she would find a way to return it to that green-scaled messenger. Tonight, she would try to sleep. Though she doubted sleep would come easily, she had just agreed to fight a shadow organization that had defeated a dragon lord. But for the first time in years, Sari felt like she was doing something that mattered, that had to count for something. Sari spent 2 days studying everything Lord Vika had sent her. Maps of the restricted port, security rotations, access codes that might or might not still work. The more she learned, the more impossible the task seemed. Council address is private. Yacht was docked in a section of the station that required special clearance to enter. Armed guards patrolled constantly. Surveillance systems covered every angle. Even if she somehow got inside, she would need to find Sierra, get her out, and escape before anyone noticed that it was impossible for one person. But maybe it was not impossible for several. On the third day, Sari went back to the Celestial Flame and found Park Junho in the kitchen. The old man was cleaning dishes, just as he always did. He looked up when she approached, and something in his eyes said he had been expecting this. You did something, he said quietly. That night on the private level. I can see it in your face. Sari glanced around to make sure no one was listening. I need help, I figured. Junho set down his dish and wiped his hands dry. Tell me. She told him everything. The Dragon Lord. The kidnapped daughter. The shadow organization controlling station security. As she spoke, Junho's expression changed from curiosity to concern to something that looked almost like recognition. The Keth Dominion, he said when she finished. You know what is happening in the border colonies. Mass killings. Entire populations being wiped out. Genocide. Junho's voice was hard. I had family in the border colonies. Had. He let the word hang in the air. They are all dead now. Killed by weapons that someone sold to the Keth. Sari felt a chill. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be useful. The old man's eyes were fierce now. You are telling me that we have a chance to stop more weapons from reaching those monsters? And save a child in the process? It is dangerous. We could die. I am old. I have been invisible my whole life. Maybe I would like to die doing something that matters. Junho smiled grimly. Besides, you cannot do this alone. You need people who know this station. People who can move without being noticed. Do you know people like that? I know everyone like that. Humans survive here by building networks. We share information, watch out for each other, help when we can. The aliens think we are too simple and disorganized for that. They are wrong. Over the next 2 days, Junho introduced Sari to the human network of Station or Vex-7. They met in basement rooms and empty storage units. Small gatherings of human workers who had learned to trust each other over years of survival. Most were skeptical at first. Why risk their lives for a dragon's child? Dragons had never done anything for humans. But Sari told them about Sierra. 12 years old, alone and scared. A child who had done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong father. I know dragons have not helped us, Sari said to a room of 15 humans. I know they look down on us. I know that if we do this, they probably will not even thank us properly. But I also know that little girl did not choose her species. She is just a scared kid waiting for someone to care. A woman in the back raised her hand. Her name was Choi Minji, and she worked on a cleaning crew that had access to secure areas. Why should we care when they never cared about us? Because that is exactly what makes us different. Sari met her eyes. They ignore us because we are small. They dismiss us because we are new to the galaxy. But humans have something they do not understand. We look out for each other. We help strangers. We do the right thing even when it costs us. Pretty words, another voice said. This was Kang Do-hyun, a maintenance technician who knew the station's hidden passages better than anyone. But pretty words do not stop bullets. No, but people who know this station inside out might be able to avoid bullets entirely. Sari looked at him directly. You know every maintenance tunnel, every ventilation shaft, every forgotten corridor on this station. What if I told you there was a way to reach the restricted port without going through any checkpoints? Do-hyun's eyes narrowed. I would say that sounds very interesting. They started planning. Minji discovered that her cleaning crew had routine access to the corridors, near Counselor Drass's shuttle bay. Nobody paid attention to cleaning staff. They were invisible, just like all humans on this station. Do-hyun mapped a route through maintenance tunnels that connected the lower levels to the restricted port. It was tight and dangerous, but it avoided all security checkpoints. JUNHO revealed something that surprised everyone. Before working in kitchens, he had been military. Earth Colonial Defense Forces, before the dissolution. He knew how to move quietly, how to fight if necessary, how to lead small teams through hostile territory. Why did you never tell anyone? Sari asked. Because being invisible means keeping secrets. My military background makes me valuable, which makes me a target. Junho shrugged. But some situations call for revealing what you have hidden. Lord Vecker sent more information through his green-scaled messenger. Financial resources appeared in accounts that Sari had never used. Security codes were updated as Drass's organization changed them. Everything the dragon could provide without alerting his handlers, he provided. But he could not act directly. The moment he moved, Drass's would know. And Sierra would pay the price. So it was up to the humans. The invisible ones. The service workers and cleaners and technicians that nobody noticed. They practiced for 3 more days. Moving through tunnels. Memorizing guard rotations. Learning hand signals and backup plans and emergency exits. It was exhausting and terrifying and thrilling all at once. Sari had never felt so alive. On the night before the mission, the team gathered in a small storage room. There were 6 of them now. Sari, Junho, Minji, Do-hyun, and 2 others who had joined along the way. A young man named Yoon Tai-woo, Sari's cousin who piloted cargo shuttles, and a woman named Han Ji-soo who worked in station communications and could monitor security channels. This is crazy, Tai-woo said, but he was smiling. We are really going to do this. We are really going to do this, Sari confirmed. JUNHO stood and looked at each of them. I want you all to understand something. Tomorrow night, we walk into enemy territory to save a child we have never met. Some of us might not come back. I need everyone to be okay with that. Silence filled the room. Min-ji spoke first. I have been cleaning floors for 12 years. Invisible, forgotten. If I die doing something that matters, that is better than living like a ghost. Dawn nodded. Same. I am tired of being nothing. One by one, they all agreed. I felt tears sting her eyes. These people barely knew her, They had no reason to risk their lives for her mission. But they were doing it anyway, because that was what humans did. "Thank you," she said quietly. "All of you." "Save the thanks for after we succeed," Junho replied. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow we make history." They left in small groups to avoid attention. Sari walked home alone through the quiet corridors of the station's lower level. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Either they would save a dragon's daughter and strike a blow against an evil organization, or they would die trying. Either way, they would not be invisible anymore. The maintenance tunnel was dark and tight, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. Sari moved forward inch by inch, feeling the cold metal against her palms. Behind her, Minji and Junho followed in silence. Their breathing was the only sound. Above them, somewhere on the main levels, Lord Viker Thren was hosting a business dinner, a decoy event to keep Counselor Drosses occupied. Every minute the dragon could hold their attention was another minute for the team to move. Sari's earpiece crackled softly. "Team 2 in position," Doyen's voice whispered. He and Taiwu were waiting near the extraction point with a cargo shuttle. If everything went according to plan, they would be the escape route. "Copy that," Sari replied quietly. Team 1 approaching target. The tunnel ended at a ventilation grate. Through the metal slats, Sari could see a corridor lined with polished floors and expensive lighting. The restricted port. Enemy territory. She checked her small tablet. According to the schedule Lord Viker had provided, the guards should be changing shifts in exactly 3 minutes. That gave them a window of about 90 seconds when this corridor would be empty. They waited. The minutes stretched like hours. Sari could feel her heart beating in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to run, to survive. But she kept thinking about Sira, 12 years old, alone and scared. The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. Guards walking past, talking in low voices about something mundane. A sports game. A shift they wanted to switch. Normal conversation from people who had no idea what was coming. The footsteps faded. "Now," Sari whispered. Junho pushed the grate open with practiced ease. They slipped into the corridor one by one, moving quickly toward the target. Counselor Drass's private yacht was docked at Bay 7. Just around the next corner, a single guard stood outside the yacht's entrance. Big. 4 arms. The same species as the guard from the restaurant. He looked bored, scrolling through something on a small device. Minji stepped forward. She had changed into a cleaner's uniform and carried a mop bucket. Just another invisible human doing invisible work. "Excuse me," she said loudly, pretending to trip. The bucket tipped, spilling water across the floor right at the guard's feet. The guard jumped back with a curse. "Watch where you are going, you stupid human." "I am so sorry." "So sorry." Minji scrambled to clean up the mess, positioning herself between the guard and the yacht entrance. "Please, let me fix this." While the guard's attention was fixed on the annoying human making his floor wet, Junho and Sari slipped past. They were inside the yacht before the guard even noticed. The interior of the yacht was exactly as Lord Viker had described. Luxurious but functional, with multiple rooms branching off from a central corridor. Security cameras covered every angle, but Doyen had disabled them remotely 5 minutes ago. They were running on a loop now, showing empty corridors while the real team moved through. "Jisoo, any chatter?" Sari whispered into her earpiece. "Nothing unusual," Han Jisoo's voice replied from her station in the communication center. "Drosses is still at the dinner. You have maybe 20 more minutes before he gets suspicious." 20 minutes. They could do this. Junho took point, moving with the silent confidence of someone who had done this kind of work before. Sari followed close behind, her eyes scanning every door they passed. According to the layout, Sierra was being held in the rear of the yacht, a converted storage room with a reinforced door. One guard inside with her at all times. They reached the door. Jun-Ho pressed his ear against it, listening. "One target," he whispered. "Moving around. Sounds distracted." Sari pulled out a small device that Lord Vecker had provided. A security override, keyed to this specific lock. She pressed it against the panel and held her breath. The light turned green. The door slid open. The guard inside spun around, reaching for his weapon. Jun-Ho was faster. The old man moved like water, flowing past the guard's defense and striking 3 precise points. The guard collapsed without making a sound, and there, huddled in the corner of the room, was Sarah Thren. She was small for a draconess, barely 4 feet tall. Her scales were pale blue, almost white, and they had lost their shine from weeks of captivity. Her golden eyes, so much like her father's, were wide with terror. "Please do not hurt me," she whispered. "I will be good. I promise I will be good." Sari's heart broke. This was just a child. A scared, traumatized child who had been threatened and isolated for weeks. She knelt down slowly, making herself small and non-threatening. "Sierra, my name is Sari. Your father sent me." The girl's eyes flickered with something like hope, then doubt. "My father cannot send anyone. They are watching him. He found a way. He never stopped trying to reach you." Sari held out her hand. "I am here to take you home. You are human." Sierra's voice was confused. Why would a human help us? It was a fair question. Sari thought about it for a moment before answering. Because someone needed help. And I was able to give it. She smiled gently. "That is what humans do. Now, will you come with me? Your father is waiting." Sierra stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took Sari's hand. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you." They moved back through the yacht. Jun-Ho in front, Sari holding Sarah's hand, Minji bringing up the rear after rejoining them. Everything was going perfectly. They were going to make it . Then Sari's earpiece crackled with static. "Problem?" Jisu's voice came through, tense with fear. "Patrol coming your way." They were not supposed to be there for another 10 minutes. Sari's blood went cold. "Can we avoid them?" "Negative. They are blocking the extraction route." Jun-Ho cursed under his breath. "Is there another way?" "Working on it." A pause. "Okay. There is a secondary corridor, but it adds 5 minutes to your route. And if Drosses finishes dinner early, we have no choice," Sari decided. "Send us the route." They changed direction, moving deeper into the restricted port. Sierra clung to Sari's hand, her claws digging in slightly but not enough to hurt. The girl was trembling but stayed quiet. She understood the danger. They rounded a corner and nearly walked straight into a guard. For a frozen moment, everyone stared at everyone else. The guard's hand moved toward his weapon. Junho acted first. He shoved Sari and Sarah behind him and charged. But the guard was fast, faster than the one on the yacht. He dodged Junho's strike and grabbed the old man by the throat. "Run!" Junho shouted. "Get her out. I am not leaving you." "That is an order?" His voice was fierce. "The mission matters more than me." "Go!" Minji grabbed Sari's arm. "He is right. We have to move." Sari looked at Junho, struggling in the guard's grip, and felt her heart tear in half. But she had Sierra. She had the mission. She could not fail now. "I will come back for you," she promised. Then she ran. They moved through corridors and maintenance shafts, following Jisu's directions. Behind them, alarms began to wail. Someone had discovered them. "Extraction point in 30 seconds, Dohyun's voice crackled. "Hurry!" Sari burst through a door and found herself on the docking platform. A cargo shuttle waited with its ramp down. Taiwu waved frantically from the cockpit. Get in, get in. Sari practically threw Sarah up the ramp, then pulled Minji in behind her. The ramp closed. The shuttle lifted off just as security forces flooded the platform below. They were out. They were safe. Sarah was safe. But as the shuttle flew toward freedom, Sari could only think about the old man they had left behind. Junho had sacrificed himself so they could escape, and she had promised to come back for him. That was a promise she intended to keep. The shuttle landed in a secure hangar on the other side of the station. Lord Vecker Thren was waiting. I had seen the Dragon Lord before, but never like this. Before, he had looked defeated, broken, a prisoner in his own skin. Now, as Sarah ran down the ramp and into his arms, he looked like something else entirely. He looked like a father. Vecker dropped to his knees and wrapped his massive arms around his daughter. His scales shimmered with colors Sari had never seen before. Blues and golds and purples that seemed to pulse with emotion. Sarah buried her face against his chest and started crying. I knew you would come, she sobbed. I knew you would find a way. I never stopped trying, Vecker rumbled. His voice cracked. Not for a single moment? Sari watched from the shuttle ramp, feeling the weight of the moment. This was why they had risked everything. This moment right here. A father holding his daughter. A family reunited. But she could not enjoy it. Not yet. Junho, she said quietly. He got captured so we could escape. We need to go back for him. Vecker looked up, his golden eyes meeting hers. Something had changed in those eyes. The fear was gone. The exhaustion was gone. What remained was pure, burning fury. The human who saved my daughter, he said slowly. Tell me where he is being held. Somewhere in the restricted port. Probably by now, Councillor Drosses knows what happened. He will use Junho as leverage. No. Vecker rose to his full height, towering over everyone in the hangar. Drosses has held power over me for 3 weeks because he had my child. That power is gone now. He has nothing. He has my friend. Then we will get your friend back. The dragon's voice was like thunder. And we will make sure Drosses never threatens anyone again. Things moved quickly after the Lord Vecker contacted the Galactic Trade Authority directly, bypassing the corrupted station security. He transmitted evidence he had been gathering for weeks. Financial records showing illegal arms deals. Communications proving the kidnapping. Connections between Dras's organization and the Keth Dominion's genocide campaign. Within an hour, GTA enforcement vessels were docking at Station Orvec 7. Within 2 hours, arrests were being made across the station. Dras's network, which had seemed so powerful and untouchable, crumbled like paper in a fire. But Councillor Drasses himself was not among the arrested. He is holed up in the restricted port, a GTA officer reported. He has hostages, including one human male. Sari stepped forward. That is my friend. I am going in. Absolutely not, the officer said. This is a GTA operation now. Civilians stay back. Vecker moved to stand beside Sari. This human led the operation that saved my daughter. She has more right to be involved than anyone in this room. With respect, Lord Thren, this is not your decision to make. Then I will make it mine. Vecker's eyes glowed brighter. My corporation owns 40% of this station's infrastructure. My legal team can file injunctions that will delay your operation for months. Or you can let one human woman join your assault team, and I will cooperate fully. The officer stared at the dragon, then at Sari, then back at the dragon. Fine, he muttered. But she stays behind the assault team. Sari nodded. That was enough. The assault on Dras's position was swift and overwhelming. GTA forces breached the restricted port from multiple angles. Dras's remaining guards, realizing they were outmatched, surrendered quickly. Nobody wanted to die for a cause that had already lost. Sari followed the assault team through smoke-filled corridors, stepping over discarded weapons and bound prisoners. Her heart pounded with every step. Where was Junho? Was he still alive? They found Counselor Drosses in the main control room, surrounded by a last handful of loyal guards. And there, on his knees with hands bound behind his back, was Park Junho. He was alive. Beaten and bloody, but alive. Drosses saw the GTA forces and knew it was over. But instead of surrendering, he grabbed Junho and pulled him close, a blade appearing in his hand. "Stay back," the Valkyrie shouted. His smooth, confident voice was gone. Now he sounded desperate, scared. "One more step and I kill the human." The assault team froze. Sari pushed forward, ignoring the officer who tried to stop her. She stepped into the open, directly facing Drosses. "Let him go," she said calmly. Drass laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The waitress. I remember you now. You were at the dinner. You were the one who started all this. Yes, you ruined everything. For what? A dragon's child? A species that looks down on you like insects? I did it because it was right." Sari took another step forward. "Let him go, Drosses. It is over. Your organization is gone. Your allies have been arrested. Even if you kill him, you gain nothing. I gain satisfaction." The blade pressed harder against Junho's throat. "I lose, but I make sure you lose too." Junho looked at Sari with eyes that were tired but clear. "Do not worry about me," he said quietly. "The mission succeeded. That is what matters." "No." Sari shook her head. "You matter too." She looked directly at Drosses. "You think humans are weak. Simple, beneath your notice. That is why you never saw us coming. But here is something you never understood about humans." She took one more step forward. "We do not leave each other behind." Behind Dross, a ventilation grate burst open. Do-Hyun dropped into the room, silent as a shadow. Before anyone could react, he struck Drass's arm, knocking the blade away. Junho twisted free and collapsed to the floor. GTA forces surged forward, overwhelming Drasses in seconds. The Valkyrie struggled and screamed, but it was useless. He was finished. Sari ran to Junho and helped him sit up. "Are you okay? How badly are you hurt?" The old man coughed and smiled weakly. "I have had worse. You should see the other guy." "There is no other guy. Drosses never stood a chance." "That is because he underestimated humans." Junho's smile grew wider. "They always do." Medical teams arrived to tend to the wounded. Drosses was led away in restraints, his face twisted with impotent rage. The operation was over. Later, in a quiet room away from the chaos, Lord Viker found Sari. "Your friend will recover," he said. "I have made sure he will receive the best care available. Thank you." "No." Viker shook his massive head. "Thank you. You gave me back my daughter. You brought down an organization that has been a poison in this sector for years. You did what I could not do, despite all my power and wealth." Sari looked up at the Dragon Lord. "I just passed you a napkin. Everything else happened because people decided to care. That is exactly my point." Viker's golden eyes were warm now, no longer burning with fury. "I have lived for 400 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have met countless species across this galaxy. But I have never met anyone quite like humans." "What do you mean?" "You are small, short-lived, physically unremarkable by galactic standards. But you have something that most species lack." He paused, searching for the right word. "Heart. You see suffering and you cannot look away. You see injustice and you must act, even when it costs you everything." Sari did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as remarkable. She had just done what felt right. The galaxy needs more of that, Vecker continued. And I intend to make sure more people understand it. Sari raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You will see. The dragon smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. The message you wrote on that napkin changed everything. Now, it is time to change everything a little more. 2 months had passed since the night everything changed. Ser. I stood at the window of her new office, looking out at Station Orvek 7's Central Plaza. The view was incredible. From up here, she could see thousands of beings going about their daily lives. Merchants and diplomats, workers and travelers. A galaxy in miniature, bustling with activity. Her office. She still could not believe those words. The door chimed and a familiar voice called out. You look like you are still getting used to it. Sari turned to find Park Junho walking in, his movements slightly slower than before, but his eyes just as sharp. The beating he had taken during the rescue had left lasting marks, but the old man refused to slow down. I keep expecting someone to tell me there's been a mistake, Sari admitted. Junho laughed. No mistake. Lord Vecker does not make mistakes. He settled into one of the comfortable chairs across from her desk. Besides, you earned this. We all did. He was right about that. After Drass's arrest, Lord Vecker had followed through on his promise to change things. He created a new division within Thren Industries called Human Relations. Its purpose was simple: to recognize and utilize the unique strengths that humans brought to galactic society. Sari was the director. Her job was to find talented humans across the sector and give them opportunities they would never have had before. Real opportunities. Not cleaning floors or serving tables, but positions that mattered. Ju and Ho had been her first hire. He now trained security personnel in what he called human observation techniques. The same skills that had made humans invisible for so long were now being taught as valuable assets. How to read body language. How to notice small details. How to see what others missed. Choi, Minji, and Kang Do-hyun had received substantial rewards for their roles in the rescue. They used the money to start a small business together, a security consulting firm that specialized in identifying weaknesses in systems. Turns out, the same skills that helped them infiltrate Drass's yacht were very valuable to corporations wanting to test their own defenses. Yoon Tai-woo had been promoted to chief pilot of Lord Vecker's personal transport fleet. And Jizu now ran a communications monitoring station that tracked illegal trafficking across the sector. Every member of the rescue team had found their lives transformed, but the changes went beyond just their small group. Lord Vecker had testified before the Galactic Council about what had happened. He told them about Drass's organization, about the weapons being sold to the Kef Dominion, about the kidnapping and coercion. But most importantly, he told them about the humans who had saved his daughter when he could not. They are a young species, he had said. And yes, they are small by galactic standards, but they possess qualities that we older species have forgotten. Empathy, courage, the ability to see someone suffering and choose to help, even at great cost to themselves. We dismissed them as primitive. We were the primitive ones. The speech had made waves across the galaxy. Suddenly, people were talking about humans differently. Not as simple workers or invisible servants, but as something valuable. Something worth paying attention to. It was not a complete transformation. Prejudice did not disappear overnight. There were still aliens who looked down on humans, still systems designed to keep them at the bottom. But the conversation had started. The door had opened, and it had all started with a napkin. The door chimed again, and this time a young Dracanis walked in. Sira Thren had grown in the 2 months since her rescue. Her scales had regained their shine, a beautiful pale blue that caught the light. Her golden eyes were bright with curiosity instead of fear. Sari, she called out happily. I finished my report on Earth history. Do you want to read it? Sari smiled warmly. Sarah had become fascinated with humans after her rescue. She spent hours asking questions about Earth, about human culture, about the strange species that had saved her when no one else could. Lord Vecker encouraged it, believing that understanding between species started with the young. I would love to read it, Sari said. Come, sit down and tell me about it. Sarah practically bounced into a chair and started talking excitedly about what she had learned. Human music, human art, the way humans had survived on what she called a death world, through cooperation and stubbornness and sheer refusal to give up. You are a remarkable species, Sarah concluded seriously. I think the galaxy is lucky to have you. Junho laughed. Well, we are glad to be here. Later that evening, Sari found herself at an unexpected location, the Celestial Flame, the same restaurant where everything had started. But this time, she was not wearing a server's uniform. This time, she was a guest. Lord Vecker had reserved the private dining room. Not for business, but for a celebration. Sari sat at the same table where she had once poured wine for a captive dragon. Now she sat beside him as an equal, sharing a meal with his daughter and her team. It felt surreal. Like something from a dream. As the dinner wound down, a young human waitress approached their table. She was nervous, her hands slightly unsteady as she cleared plates. Sari recognized that nervousness. She had felt it herself not so long ago. The waitress glanced at their table, at the mix of humans and the powerful Draconess Lord, and her eyes went wide with confusion. This was not how things were supposed to work. Humans did not dine with dragons. Sari smiled and caught her eye. You are doing great, she said quietly. Keep it up. The waitress blinked, then managed a small smile back before hurrying away with the plates. When the meal was finished and the others were saying their goodbyes, Sari asked for a napkin and a pen. She wrote a message, just as she had done 2 months ago. But this message was different. She left the napkin on the table. With her tip. The message read, You matter more than they know. Keep watching. Keep caring. Someday, you might change everything too. Signed, someone who was once invisible. She did not know if the waitress would find it. She did not know if it would mean anything. But she remembered how it felt to be invisible. How it felt to believe that she was nothing more than a pair of hands carrying plates. Maybe this napkin would not change anything. Or maybe, just maybe, it would plant a seed that would grow into something remarkable. Lord Vecker noticed what she had done. He said nothing, but there was warmth in his ancient eyes. Understanding. Ready to go? Yes. Ser. I took one last look at the private dining room. At the table where she had made a decision that changed her life. At the place where a waitress had dared to reach out to a dragon. Yes, she said. I am ready. They walked out together, leaving the restaurant behind. Outside, Station Orvex 7 hummed with life. Thousands of beings moving through their days, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own moments of choice. Most of them would never do anything remarkable. Most of them would remain invisible, but some of them would see. Someone drowning and reach out a hand. Some of them would pass a napkin to a stranger. Some of them would change. Everything. Ser. I looked up at the artificial stars that dotted the stations. Ceiling and smiled. It was a good galaxy to live in, and it was getting better. One small act of courage at a time.